National Desk, America's News Now. Tonight, verdict watch in Wisconsin. Day one of deliberations in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse as tensions flare outside of the courthouse. What the jury requested after deliberations began and the unusual scene that played out inside the courtroom. Plus, breaking records at the border. New numbers show illegal immigrants are crossing the southern border at an alarming rate, and there's no sign of it slowing down.
It is certainly a historic high, Senator.
So you're right, it's broken, but you broke it.
The mounting problems stacking up as countries refuse to take their native migrants back. The impact it's having on the U.S. immigration system. And a blue-collar exodus. The working class, once formed the backbone of the Democratic Party, are now leaning right. Our fact-check team digging into the numbers and looking at the reasons they're switching sides. Live from the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Megan O'Halloran. Day one of deliberations in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse officially over. Now, all eyes on day two. Let's get right over to Eugene Ramirez joining us from the live desk with how the city of Kenosha is preparing for the ruling.
And the live desk on verdict watch tonight in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where 18-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse faces life in prison. The Wisconsin National Guard is on standby right now, and tonight Governor Tony Evers asking for peace no matter the outcome. Now, the jury is resting for the night, 18 of them hearing this case. Earlier today, the judge asking Rittenhouse to draw 6 numbers, you see it here, corresponding to jurors. The remaining 12 will then decide his fate. 7 women, 5 men. 1 is a person of color. Hours into the deliberations, jurors asking for extra copies of their jury instructions. They're deliberating 5 counts: first-degree intentional homicide, first-degree reckless homicide, attempted first-degree intentional homicide, and 2 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety. Now, politics playing into public opinion here. Rittenhouse is accused of shooting 3 white men, killing 2 during the August 2020 protests following the police shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man in Kenosha. Rittenhouse claims self-defense. The prosecution, though, says Rittenhouse provoked this incident. Today, Second Amendment advocates saying they believe Rittenhouse is innocent.
We feel this all politically motivated and that Kyle did nothing but defend himself.
Others, meantime, calling for justice for those men killed by Rittenhouse, along with a review of policing nationwide. Jurors wrapped up for the day a few hours ago. Deliberations continue at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. We'll stay on top of it all from the live desk.
And to another high-profile murder trial. The prosecution resting its case today in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. The defense preparing to deliver their arguments tomorrow. 3 white men, Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and William Bryan Jr., are accused of chasing and killing Arbery while he was out jogging. The defendants say they were trying to make a citizen's arrest and have pleaded not guilty. Now, we spoke with renowned criminal defense attorney Mark O'Mara. He successfully defended George Zimmerman in his 2013 murder trial. He says the deciding verdict in both the Rittenhouse and the Arbery murder trials comes down to the question, was the shooting in self-defense?
Once he came around that corner of the car and took that left going towards the younger McMichael, why he did, I'm sure he did it because McMichael said something like, "I'm about to shoot you," or whatever. But once he came around and went towards him, he puts the gun in play, and now it's self-defense on either behalf.
We'll have continuing coverage of both the Kyle Rittenhouse and Ahmaud Arbery murder trials, as well as the full interview with Mark O'Mara. We have it posted on our Facebook page. You can find us right now at the National Desk. Tonight, officials bracing for several thousand migrants to arrive at the southern border. Those people from Haiti and Central America are reportedly traveling through Mexico right now. Customs and Border Patrol says it stands ready to address any issues. Well, the Secretary of Homeland Security on Capitol Hill earlier today answering tough questions about the number of migrants making their way into the U.S. illegally. This is 20% of Border Patrol agents have yet to comply with the federal vaccine mandate, heightening concerns the country will soon see fewer agents out on patrol. The National Desk, Ryan Smith joining us now with details on those numbers and just where these people are coming from.
Numbers at the border are actually lower than they were a little earlier this year, but a growing problem for the president now, an unprecedented number of migrants coming from nations that make deportations difficult. Cold and calculated. That's how Border Patrol agents describe the human smugglers responsible for leaving a 5-year-old girl on an island in the Rio Grande. Here, the emotional reunion between mother and daughter, moments after responding agents rescue the girl. Smugglers are reportedly leading massive groups of more than 100 migrants in an attempt to overwhelm Texas agents on the ground. The station in Eagle Pass, Texas, encountering more than 1,600 migrants over the weekend alone. Agents there are averaging more than 500 apprehensions per day so far this month, making the Del Rio sector a new hotspot on the southern border.
Hey, make no mistake, though, this is not just an American issue. This is a regional crisis. And under the Trump administration, that's how we approached it. We brought Mexico to the table, as well as Central American countries and other countries as well, to really address this globally.
A new border problem for President Biden, nations that won't take back migrants. A growing number of migrant adults are coming from countries that make deportation difficult: Venezuela, Cuba, and Brazil. Axios reports U.S. officials are encountering nearly 800 Venezuelan migrants each day, more than any other nationality except Mexico. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas responding to criticism on Capitol Hill Tuesday.
Rebuilding a broken immigration system and rebuilding a dismantled one takes time, and we're on the road to success.
So you think we have more control over the border now than we did under Trump?
Senator, we're very focused.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott will address this developing situation tomorrow. They're on the ground in Eagle Pass, Texas. Meantime, President Biden is set to meet with the president of Mexico on Thursday.
Another border crisis, this time in Europe. Thousands of migrants from the Middle East clashing with police in Poland.
So, if they give us flour, we will give them flour. But if they give us gas, we will give them stone.
Tear gas and water cannons were fired from the Polish side while migrants threw rocks from Belarus earlier today. Those migrants from countries like Iraq and Syria reportedly heard rumors the border was open so they could pass into Germany. That border checkpoint is clear tonight.
Breaking news here at the live desk now. A federal judicial panel confirming where dozens of lawsuits aiming to block the Biden administration's vaccine mandate will be heard. At least 34 lawsuits related to the mandates will now be heard in the federal appeals court in Cincinnati. Those lawsuits coming from 27 different states. The Department of Justice ordering that the cases all be consolidated into one single court. That court of Cincinnati now one of the more conservative in the country. In fact, nearly half of its judges were nominated by former President Donald Trump.
With big wins for Republicans this past election day, there's a lot of attention on blue-collar voters and whether they're shifting now more to the right. Our fact-check team has been looking through historical trends, exit polls, and surveys to see where these voters could land during the upcoming elections.
A number of major headlines tout the Democrats mourning for their blue-collar voters, and others talk about how some working-class voters are a new base for Republicans, essentially a battle for working class in America. So we wanted to break down some of these demographics tonight. The Fact Check here joining me now with some of those results.
Right, so let's first start off with some definitions, right? When you said working class, there are two main ways to break that down. The first is by education. The second is by union affiliation. So we went with the education definition because that's the polling that we had access to. That means people whose highest level of education was some college, not a degree. So that includes a ton of skills workers. This represents 41% of all eligible voters in 2020, that white working class. When we take a look at the presidential elections since 1980, there have only been 3 elections where Republicans had less than 50% of this key vote, that white high school and some college education. Look at this roller coaster ride, 1992 and 1996 and 2008. Other than those election years, Republicans are over 50% of that working class demographic each year. In 1992, support for the GOP by working class was only at 32%, but in 96, it climbed 6 points, and then another 12 points in the year 2000. 2008, it dropped back down 5 points, but support rebounded in 2012 to get to 57% overall support from that white working class. Now, in 2016, that was the highest for Republicans, with 62% of working class people voting for President Trump, another 5-point bump up, but that high percentage actually dipped by 3% in 2020. So the Republican voting strength within the working class has actually been years in the making.
And so we want to look at Virginia now. So Republican Glenn Youngkin came out on top, and he can thank blue-collar men and women for helping him win. Take a look at those numbers there. Youngkin had 74% of votes from blue-collar white women, and he had 59% of the overall blue-collar vote. Now let's turn to New Jersey for a second. A section of South Jersey is described as working-class suburbia. That's where the longest-serving New Jersey Senate president and union iron worker Stephen Sweeney lost his seat just weeks ago to Republican Edward Durr. That's a non-union truck driver who spent a few $1,000s on his campaign. Now, this win speaks to the historic nature of blue-collar workers leaning right, with both candidates being part of the working class. Gloucester, a historically Democrat stronghold, tipped Republican.
Important context tonight from John and Janae and our fact-check team. When we come back, we examine a key voting demographic behind Biden's slipping approval ratings.
And still to come tonight, a potential attack on democracy. That's what some are saying after a raid on a conservative news organization. Tonight, why it has some of the most left-leaning groups in Washington also crying foul.
And new tonight, the U.S. now on pace to fast-track booster shots ahead of the holidays. The updated timeline for when millions more people could be rolling up their sleeves.
And as we head to break, we'll take you out to New York City. The city today announcing crowds will be welcomed back to Times Square for the New Year's Eve celebrations this year, as long as they can prove that they're fully vaccinated. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
New tonight at the live desk, all adults could be eligible for a COVID-19 booster shot by Thanksgiving. The New York Times reporting tonight that the FDA could authorize Pfizer's booster dose for all in the next 48 hours. The FDA is expected to make that decision without a review from its vaccine panel. Meantime, the CDC's vaccine committee already has a meeting scheduled to review data on the booster shot this coming Friday. Now, this means the agencies could give authorization just over a week after Pfizer applied for it. If they do, any adult who got the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine could get a booster dose 6 months after their second dose. Right now, at least 30% of vaccinated adults do not qualify for the booster, though. Now, some states have already authorized boosters for all or most. This map you see here showing all the places where any adult can get the third shot right now. Arkansas and West Virginia are the latest. They join New Mexico, Colorado, and California. Other states working to do the same, skirting federal guidelines.
The National Desk, team of reporters bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and tonight we start in Portland, Oregon, where a staff shortage left a number of students searching for a ride.
Veronica Huff had to personally drive her kids to school multiple times after their school bus just didn't show up on time. The Reynolds School District responds, saying they do make sure if this happens, the kids are taken care of.
What happens is our transportation department communicates with the school, so that way the school can work with their teachers to be able to, get the work and not punish, the student, for being late or not even being there.
Steve Padilla says they are very short-staffed due to the pandemic. Some retired part-time drivers didn't want to drive buses filled with kids who are unvaccinated, while others lost their jobs and had to relocate.
We might not have as many bus drivers as we did, and there might be a delay every once in a while, and just ask for your patience, and we will do the best we can with the people that we have.
In Austin, Texas, students at one school showed up to find their main bathroom doors were gone, completely taken off the hinges. However, bathroom stall doors were still in place. Officials at Travis Early College High School say they made the decision because of drug use inside school restrooms. Many of the students apparently not happy about this change.
They didn't really inform anybody that it was going to happen, so it's not really fair to just take it away and not let everybody get an opinion on it.
The school principal issued an apology email to parents for the lack of communication. The school says it has not seen any conduct violations since the doors came off. And in San Antonio, a different way to approach treatment when it comes to teens suffering from addiction. Rise Inspire Academy is a free high school for young addicts. The high school does not punish the teens. Instead, it works with them to find the root of the problem and helps them work towards their recovery goals.
This is not just about preventing drug use. This is about making sure our kids are successful in their future, complete whatever goals that they set for themselves, and most of the time that's graduating high school and going to do something professionally for themselves.
The high school expects to be able to house up to 60 students in the new building. Construction will wrap up in May.
At the live desk, a state of emergency in the Pacific Northwest tonight. Plus, we're tracking the next weather maker that could impact your Thanksgiving travel. Next.
Taking you out live to Atlanta, Georgia tonight. The spokesperson for Atlanta Public Schools says nearly 2,000 students applied to switch to Atlanta Virtual Academy, the city's virtual learning program for the second semester that starts in January. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
Breaking news at the live desk. The weather system hitting the Pacific Northwest has turned deadly. Tonight, authorities in Canada saying a woman was killed in a mudslide there yesterday. Right now, rescue teams are looking through other vehicles to locate more potential victims. At least 2 others we know are missing tonight. Meantime, in Washington state, a man there also missing after he was swept away by fast-moving water. A state of emergency is in effect there tonight for several counties. The same system causing catastrophic flooding and landslides. And right now, temperatures are near freezing there as almost 50,000 people remain without electricity. New video here, just coming into the live desk. You see it here. It shows a neighborhood nearly underwater. Authorities still working to rescue people trapped in these low-lying areas. Meantime, as we look ahead here, we're also tracking the next big weather maker for the Midwest and the East Coast. This one could significantly impact your Thanksgiving travel. This map you see here showing areas that could see snow, rain, as well as strong winds early next week. Areas you see here in red, that's where you can expect some travel impacts. That includes Chicago and most of the Northeast. The Weather Prediction Center saying that the system will form Sunday. We'll, of course, keep an eye on it from the live desk.
Tonight, critics are worried about overly aggressive tactics from President Biden's Department of Justice. The group Project Veritas, known for its questionable way of collecting information, apparently under investigation tonight. Apparent raids on the group's founder have free speech advocates concerned about government overreach. The National Desk, Christine Frizzell, reports.
Apartments and homes of Project Veritas journalists, or former journalists, had been raided by FBI agents.
In a video message confirming an investigation by the FBI, Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe claims his organization is under attack after receiving a diary said to belong to Ashley Biden, daughter of President Joe Biden.
We could not determine if the diary was real, if the diary in fact belonged to Ashley Biden, or if the contents of the diary occurred. We could not publish the diary and any part thereof.
Some pages of which were published on a different conservative website, but raids on the homes of people affiliated with Project Veritas were searched. The ACLU sounding alarm bells about the precedent this case could set. The Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press has now filed a motion to unseal search warrants, affidavits, and other documents related to the November 5th search of O'Keefe's residence to try to get a sense of the government's intent.
If they're justifying it on the basis that they don't think Project Veritas is a news organization, then essentially we have the government defining who is and isn't the press, and that is very dangerous.
Jane Kirtley is the former executive director of the Reporters Committee and now teaches media ethics and law at the University of Minnesota Law School and says she's no fan of Project Veritas.
There are many things that they do that I think are at the very least unethical from a journalistic perspective. But if they are not protected, then frankly, nobody in the news media is protected.
We reached out to the Department of Justice for more information on this case, and a spokesman declined to comment. Free speech advocates, though, say that while journalists are not above the law, that the protections they are given, from the First Amendment to the Privacy Protection Act, are there not just for them, but for the protection of democracy itself. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
A new poll out from ABC and the Washington Post show President Biden's approval rating hitting a new low. The poll has his net approval rating sitting at 41%, 3 points lower than it was 2 months ago. His disapproval rating is 53% tonight. The fact-check team looking into some key demographics in that poll contributing to the slip and how some of those same voters made the difference in the Virginia's governor race.
With the president's dipping approval numbers, Republicans have the chance to make waves with a key voting bloc. The fact-check team here digging through data and surveys about independents and who is motivated by issues like education, the economy, and of course, taxes.
So those themes, along with Afghanistan, have been in play for months. And a recent poll shows President Biden with an approval rating of 41%. Now, the reason is largely in part to independents. They're not happy with the president. Only 35% of them said they approve of his job performance, and with 58% disapproving. Now, that's a long way from his 61% approval among independents in January. 71% of them say he's not accomplished much after 10 months in office and blame him for the fast rising inflation. Now, long term, most nonpartisan experts feel the way to go is to get the middle. And if the president continues to have trouble with independents, it could hurt Democrats across the nation.
Right. And when we look at these numbers for independents on a more local level, we see similar themes and results happening. In Virginia, 1/3 of voters self-identify as being independent or belonging to a party other than Republican and Democrat. Those voters originally were in favor of President Biden, with Virginia independents voting for him by around a 10% margin. But when we look at the recent governor's election, there's a 20% swing. While it's still split close to the middle, The vote is in favor of Youngkin at 54%, a 10-point margin in the opposite direction from the 2020 election. Those big issues, taxes, the economy, and education, we talked about those on both sides, but by the numbers, it looks like Youngkin's lean into the education controversies in Loudoun County won him those extra votes.
Important numbers to break down to get a really picture at how America votes. Thank you both, John and Janae. The Fact Check team will continue to follow developments on this issue and other issues. You can always read this story with links to where they found their information tonight online and on our Facebook page.
And still to come, Florida parents fed up. A group of mothers going head-to-head with a school district over books. Why they say they do not belong on school shelves.
A historic strike at an emblematic American company. Coming up, what's on the table tonight as John Deere hopes to get thousands of workers back on the production line.
And as we head to break, let's go west. A live look at Portland, Oregon tonight. The Justice Department there recommending all uniformed officers in the city wear body cameras if they're on tactical traffic or crowd control operations. Portland, by the way, is the only top 75 city that's choosing not to use body cameras. This is the National Desk, America's News Now.
At the live desk, just hours from now, thousands of workers will vote on a tentative agreement that could end the now month-long strike at John Deere, the first in 35 years for the company. Workers walked off the job on October 14th, wanting better pay as the company saw growth. John Deere expects to make $5.8 billion this year. That's a boom compared to 2020 and 2019. The proposed contract adds increased incentive pay tied to production, but it also keeps general pay increases, pension contributions, and other terms presented in an earlier offer that the workers rejected. The offer covers some 10,000 workers in Colorado, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, and Kansas who are members of the United Auto Workers Union.
Teacher bounty or education accountability. Coming up next, the new law in one state that has some calling for the education commissioner there to step down.
And as we head to break, a live look over Washington, D.C. tonight. Earlier, the mayor announcing the city will lift its indoor mask mandate on Monday. However, the mask requirement will still remain in place in certain indoor places like public transit, schools, and nursing homes. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
A jury debates and a city prepares. Tonight, the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse and the plans for a verdict already underway. Plus, parents in Florida asking a school district to ban more than 50 books. The books on the list and why some think they're controversial. Plus,
you're exhausted and you're focused on this new life.
Filling out paperwork to get your baby's birth certificate. The invasive policy getting pushback in one state tonight. Live from the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Megan O'Halloran. Tonight, hundreds of National Guard troops are standing by outside of Kenosha, Wisconsin, as the city awaits the verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Jurors deliberated all day. Let's get over to Eugene Ramirez joining us at the live desk with where things stand right now.
And all eyes on Kenosha, Wisconsin tonight. In less than 12 hours, jury deliberations will resume in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. Tonight, the Kenosha Police Department says it has no plans for curfews, street closures, or extra patrols ahead of the jury's decision, but the governor has 500 National Guard members on standby as he asked the city for peace. Now, deliberations began today shortly after Rittenhouse himself, as you see here, chose the names of 6 alternate jurors who were dismissed. The 12 deliberating only made 2 requests once they began. They requested for extra copies of their instructions from the judge, first asking for pages 1 through 6. Those are the pages that focus on self-defense and provocation, crimes requiring intent, and the instructions on the reckless homicide charge related to the death of Joseph Rosenbaum. They later asked for the entire 36-page document. Meantime, outside the courthouse, the political aspects of this trial on full display today. Rittenhouse's charges stemming from an incident following the police shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man in Kenosha. The case mobilizing Second Amendment and self-defense advocates, as well as those frustrated that the officer who shot Jacob Blake never faced charges. Rittenhouse faces life in prison if he's found guilty of the most serious charge. Deliberations continue at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow.
New tonight, the Biden administration's top border officials admit the immigration system is broken. Right now, several caravans of thousands of migrants from Haiti and Central America are reportedly traveling through Mexico towards the southern border. These numbers on top of the record number already taken into custody this year. The National Desk Chief Political Correspondent Scott Thuman joining us now with a look at the heated testimony that played out on Capitol Hill today.
At the southern border, new alarming figures. 164,000 migrant encounters, an October record, and a dramatic increase over October of last year's almost 72,000 apprehensions. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas in the hot seat on Capitol Hill Tuesday.
Do you believe that the Biden immigration policies are successful?
I think rebuilding a broken immigration system and rebuilding a dismantled one takes time, and we're on the road to success.
So you think we have more control over the border now than we did under Trump?
Senator, we're very focused on the number.
That's not the question.
We have more control that is consistent with our values as a nation.
Okay.
Mayorkas confirming this year could see more than 2 million encounters, including 125,000 unaccompanied minors already. While the numbers are actually dropping from this summer's high, so are Biden's approval ratings regarding the border. Since January, Americans' confidence in the handling has gradually dropped from 52 to 35%.
True or false, Secretary Mayorkas, this year, under Joe Biden, we've seen the highest rate of illegal immigration in 61 years.
Again, I don't know the number of years, but it's certainly a historic high, Senator.
So you're right, it's broken, but you broke it.
So what kind of fixes may be in the works? President Biden set to meet with the leaders of Mexico and Canada Thursday, but as he's trying to do away with the Remain in Mexico policy, which keeps asylum seekers in Mexico while they wait for their claims to be processed in U.S. courts.
This is not just an American issue. This is a regional crisis. And under the Trump administration, that's how we approached it. We brought Mexico to the table, as well as Central American countries.
But solutions have also proven elusive on the Hill, with both parties pointing blame at each other.
Congress cannot just stand by the side and bark criticism at the secretary.
Now, another move that could be considered right now in the Build Back Better plan, or at least the current version of it, would actually grant the ability for some undocumented immigrants to work here legally in the United States and give a reprieve from the possibility of deportation for 10 years. Megan?
So, Scott, is that as far as they'll go in the bill to address immigration?
Well, maybe, maybe not. We don't know. There are outside groups that are pushing to actually replace a provision that was yanked from one of the earlier versions of the BBB. That would allow for people who have been in the United States prior to 2010 to get an easier pathway to getting a green card. But putting that back in this bill that's already so controversial could be difficult.
Scott Thuman reporting tonight from Capitol Hill. Thank you. The Department of Homeland Security says it's still investigating an image that went viral as a group of Haitian migrants camped out at Del Rio, Texas. These images went global back in September. Here they are, a border agent appearing to whip several Haitians. Well, the photographer who took these pictures actually said those were reins and he didn't see any migrants hit with them. No word on when that investigation will be complete. And new tonight, the battle over what is being taught in schools now reaching school libraries. At least 28 states have taken or proposed action on what many call critical race theory, restricting how teachers talk about racism and other topics. Several of those are now talking about removing books from schools after the content topics were challenged by either community members, state or local officials. Joining that list tonight, Florida. A group of angry parents taking a stand at a school board meeting tonight asking district officials to ban a list of more than 50 books. The National Desk, Jay O'Brien, has more on the back and forth between parents and educators and what's actually in these books.
Yeah, this is a Florida school district that went from debating masks in the classroom to now talking about what children should be reading in school. And there were a number of parents that showed up here tonight to make their voices heard on that issue.
These books have no educational value.
A fiery Indian River County School Board meeting.
It's disgusting.
Focusing on more than 50 books that a conservative group of parents wants banned from school libraries. Some, they claim, are too sexual.
The biggest thing is the pornography. These books that have absolutely no educational value to children, and they can just go to the library and check them out.
Parent Jennifer Pippin is part of a national organization, Moms for Liberty, working on banning a hefty list of books across the country. In Indian River County, parents have already succeeded in pulling the book All Boys Aren't Blue from school shelves because of graphic imagery. The school superintendent apologizing tonight for not examining the book properly. But Pippin shared with us this list of the other books her organization objects to. Many do have sexually explicit scenes, but in these documents submitted to the school board, we found some of the books are in parents' crosshairs because they discuss things like LGBTQ issues. Not to mention, this list includes works of famous literature, like the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel Beloved by Toni Morrison.
Sure.
One of them is a book about 9/11. Where is the objectionable material in those books?
Sure. So once you get into these books, again, once you see, they'll have, a sex act in them, or they'll have, the critical race theory.
Teaching critical race theory is banned in Florida, and Pippin argues these books on Black Lives Matter and anti-racism fall into that category.
It's censorship.
Parent Mike Marsh disagrees.
We have freedom of speech for a reason, okay? So your feelings and emotions do not trump our rights. And who gets to dictate what's okay?
The accusation against your group, and I know you've heard it,
Sure.
is that you're engaging in a form of cancel culture.
Sure.
Is that fair criticism?
We completely disagree with that. State statutes state that pornography is not to be in K through 12 schools. So we're not trying to ban books. If these parents want their children to read them, they can get them on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. We're not trying to throw them in a pile and burn them all.
And late tonight, we did hear from the school board, who voted unanimously to create a commission here to study all of the books in their libraries to determine whether or not they fall in line with Florida law. The superintendent tonight saying after that review process, some books might be pulled and others might go back on the shelves. I'm Jay O'Brien for the National Desk, America's News Now.
A Loudoun County teacher suing the school board over preferred pronouns. Tanner Cross, a physical education teacher, suing over policy 8040, which says teachers and staff must refer to students by their chosen pronouns. Cross and other teachers say the policy violates their First Amendment right to free speech and religion. Now the ACLU is getting involved.
They say that they're treating them all equally, but what they're actually asking to do is to not use pronouns for those students, even though they're using them for all other students. That's not equal treatment, that's discrimination.
A judge has been asked to temporarily suspend the policy. So far, a decision has not yet been made. Teachers in New Hampshire face new legal threats after the state passed a first-of-its-kind law, the first in the entire country, targeting anti-divisive topics. The National Desk, Ryan Smith, joining us now with more.
This is called the Right to Freedom from Discrimination in Public Workplaces and Education Law. It bans educators from teaching specific topics related to race, racism, gender, and sexism. Now one group is offering a reward to catch teachers there breaking that new law. The new law says educators cannot teach that a group is inherently superior or inferior to people of another identified group, or that a group is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive. A handful of other states have passed similar measures as critical race theory has become a controversial subject within the public education system. But here's how New Hampshire's law stands alone. The state's Department of Education created a new website allowing parents and students to file complaints against teachers for violating the new law.
We're able to give students a characteristic of you are the consumer of education. And if you don't like what you're getting, then you can go elsewhere.
The New Hampshire chapter of Moms for Liberty is offering a $500 reward to the first person who successfully reports a teacher breaking the law. Some call it a bounty on teachers. Others say it's accountability.
The point of this is to incentivize folks to find problems in the system. And actually, we've been contacted by a number of teachers already who have said that they don't feel comfortable with a certain curriculum and that they want to anonymously report it.
So you just heard from one side of this issue right there, but this is getting a lot of pushback we want to mention from teachers and teacher unions. I spoke with the president of the American Federation of Teachers New Hampshire tonight. They are now calling on the governor to demand that the education commissioner step down over the state creating a webpage for parents to file those complaints against teachers. She told me in part tonight, totally innocent teachers could lose their teaching license over claims that are not backed up by any evidence. She goes on to say that the education commissioner has declared a war on teachers, a war that the overwhelming majority of New Hampshire parents will find repulsive.
And another record broken at the Port of Los Angeles as the backlog there grows ahead of the holiday season. Coming up, the new numbers just into the live desk and the efforts to relieve the problem.
And as we head to break, a live look over Atlanta, Georgia tonight, where earlier a grand jury indicted 6 deputies on 5 charges, including felony murder in the death of an inmate at the county jail. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
At the live desk, another record-breaking day at one of the busiest ports here in the U.S. 84 container ships now waiting for service at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. That breaks a record set just yesterday. The problem, though, not just off the coast. The port's director saying there are about 65,000 containers that are empty and clogging up the docks in Los Angeles. Now, that's up 18% from a couple weeks ago. He says sweeper ships are now coming to take some of those empty containers back to factories in Asia. But some progress tonight. The number of containers that need to be unloaded are down 25% from 3 weeks ago. The director saying that's enough to delay plans to impose a new fee on containers that are not picked up in time. Now, starting Monday, companies will need to make sure that their containers are moved by trucks out of the port in 9 days. Anything moving by rail will only have 6 days before getting hit with overstay fees. Those fees start at $100 per container for the first day, $200 for the second, and racks up from there.
And due to the backlog at the ports, costs are skyrocketing on everything from checking out at the grocery store to prices at the pump. President Biden, not the first president to deal with inflation on a grand scale. Past presidents have tried different techniques to tackle the problems in their own times. In fact, President Nixon attempted a freeze on prices. Jimmy Carter appointed a Fed Reserve chair who would tighten monetary policies. And JFK tried to negotiate with companies to hold prices down, while Gerald Ford held pep rallies. The president has acknowledged the problem is hurting Americans.
We got higher demand for goods at the same time we're facing disruptions in the supplies to make those goods. This is a recipe for delays and for higher prices, and people are feeling it.
Economists say not much can be done about runaway inflation until they have to wait until prices stabilize. This all comes after a recent report shows a 30-year high in prices. Coming up, backlash over birth certificates. Mothers required to answer over 100 questions within hours after giving birth. Why some parents are saying the process is invasive and just too much.
I just put it. Breaking news tonight at the live desk. 2 violent inmates who escaped a Georgia prison are now back in custody, recaptured just hours ago. The men are part of a group of 5. You see them here. They escaped from the Pulaski County Jail, stealing a prison van and tasers. 2 were captured earlier on Sunday. Well, tonight, Dennis Penix Jr. and Brandon Pooler are back in custody. They were found hiding in a home just 20 miles away from that jail. Penix was serving time for killing 2 men in 2017. Meantime, Pooler was convicted on child cruelty charges. Still tonight, Tyree Williams remains on the loose. He was in jail for murder. Authorities say if you see him, do not approach. Just call 911.
Every year, over 3 million babies are born here in the U.S., which means over 3 million new birth certificates are issued. In Utah, though, the process of getting a birth certificate isn't as easy. New mothers are forced to fill out dozens and dozens of pages of personal questions to obtain the paperwork. The National Desk, Heidi Hatch, has the story tonight from Salt Lake City.
You guys want to meet someone?
We sure do. The first minutes and hours after a baby is born can be some of the most important when it comes to bonding.
You're exhausted and you're focused on this new life.
And yet, the state of Utah requires new moms to answer more than 100 questions.
So I tried to avoid filling it out until I had kind of gotten through some of that recovery, but the nurse kept coming back in and insisting that I needed to fill it out immediately.
Ivy Estabrook had a scheduled C-section just before Valentine's Day this year. The birth of her third daughter, Catherine, went as expected until she was handed the state's parental birth worksheet.
It asks for a lot of personal medical information about the mother, including, like, did you use any fertility treatments? Did you use a sperm donor? If you didn't take prenatal vitamins, why didn't you?
Have you been tested for Zika? Did you have your teeth cleaned while pregnant? And your weight at delivery?
There are a lot of questions in it about previous births, previous pregnancies. And to me, that in particular can be very re-traumatizing if you've had miscarriages or you've lost children. It just feels not only invasive and not only really none of the state's business.
Estabrook wasn't happy about the barrage of questions at the time, but felt she had no choice.
The fine print is really clear. If you do not fill it out completely and accurately, you will not get a birth certificate. Hey, you want some Cheerios? With some distance, it's made me even more angry.
She contacted the governor's office, the AG, and the state health department starting in May, wanting to see if the data she handed over really is required and if it could be removed.
Either have gotten no response or have gotten kind of a lot of pushback.
That's when we started making calls.
We did have a new mom reach out to us with some concerns.
Tom Hudako, director of communications for the state health department, admitted.
As we worked through her concerns and looked at it, we did come to the realization that the wording on it was likely a little bit too strong.
Estabrook understands why the state would want the information. She has a PhD in neuroscience. As a researcher, she believes the state is conducting bad science by collecting data without clear consent.
To me, that's a violation of those kind of scientific ethics that as a scientist I think are really important.
The state apparently agrees, telling 2 News they're ready to change the form.
Really, what isn't is not.
Hudako says the state will now ask permission for that information, making much of it optional.
I think the last thing that we want to do is introduce stress into that type of a situation.
That was Heidi Hatch reporting. Coming up, a search underway right now for 2 missing girls. What police say the suspect used to do for work and why they say that makes him so dangerous.
Breaking out the live desk, an Amber Alert issued for a 4-year-old girl in Idaho has now been extended into Nevada. Elena Dewey was last seen at 10:30 this morning. Authorities say she was abducted by the woman you see on the right, Elizabeth Rose Crofts. The two may be traveling in a 2004 Pontiac Grand Prix. They're headed to either Boise or across state lines to Arizona. Anyone with information should call 911 tonight.
And another frantic search happening in Pennsylvania where 2 girls were taken from their home. It happened in Windsor Township earlier today. Police say the suspect is a former police officer. They say Robert Vicosa, also known as Robert Brown, took a woman captive at gunpoint before stealing her car with the 6- and 7-year-old girls both inside.
We're going to use anything to our availability, regardless of what his job is, to make sure that we bring this to a safe resolution. Of course, if he does have some specialized training, we're looking into that to make sure that that we can counter that by any means necessary.
Vicosa was fired from his policing job in August. He is considered armed and dangerous. New tonight, a House Republican introducing a new bill to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. Freshman South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace proposed a bill that removes legal penalties for cannabis businesses and regulates them like liquor stores, bars, and restaurants that sell alcohol. It would be up to states to regulate. The conversation will continue online tomorrow and on air starting at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. We leave you with one last look at America's news and weather now where you live.
Hi, everyone. Meteorologist Kristen Clark with a look at the weather makers across the western central United States. There's a powerful storm just north of the Great Lakes, whipping up the winds across the Dakotas, upper Midwest, and Great Lakes throughout the day, and also bringing a band of rain anywhere from Chicago south and west into St. Louis. Not a whole lot of moisture to work with, though, at the southern extent of that front, so likely to stay dry with that frontal passage in the central southern plains, but really cooling down with an influx of much colder air as fair weather high pressure settles across the northern and central Rockies here midweek. Now the west coast dries out, most especially there the Pacific Northwest after dealing with historic flooding in the northwest corner of Washington state. There's another storm waiting in the wings well offshore that slowly meanders east into Oregon on Thursday. That brings about more of a lighter rain to the Pacific Northwest with around a mountain snow in the Cascades later on this week. But look at the cool down. Billings 39 degrees, the projected high on Wednesday. The normal high in Billings is like 45, 46 degrees. I mean, even Denver, quite the swing in temperature, which often happens this time of the year with these sharp cold fronts. In the 70s just on Tuesday, but best we can do is 41 degrees for a high in the Mile High City Wednesday afternoon. And quite the difference too, Minneapolis, Kansas City, 40s to low 50s. And we have a nice dry day in the Pacific Northwest. Upper 40s, low 50s there, Seattle south into Portland, and nice and sunny, of course. Los Angeles, there you are sitting at 65 degrees. And that's a look at the weather from here.
Hi, I'm meteorologist Marshall McPeak. We are watching a cold front as it tries to make its way through the Midwest. Some rain up in the upper Great Lakes, even some snow showers. Green Bay at 42 for the overnight tonight. Erie still just mostly cloudy and 36. Clarksburg at 40 degrees. Out in Portland, some snow showers early on and 27 for the overnight low. To the south, brilliant, beautiful, clear sky from Atlanta all the way to Mobile and Orlando. Highs in Augusta, the overnight lows in Augusta at 47 and 59 in Orlando. Here's that cold front. This is your next big weather maker, and it's going to drive all kinds of rain and snow showers through the Great Lakes, but high pressure to the south will keep the southeast looking pretty nice through the daytime on Wednesday. This is going to create some very gusty winds from St. Louis to Columbus on up into parts of New York State. Be ready for some very gusty winds, but that will also warm things up. So it's going to be a mild afternoon across parts of Ohio and on up into the upper Great Lakes and into New England. The southeastern U.S. should be pretty nice. The rain tapers off behind that front as it makes its way to the east. So by Thursday, plenty of rain through New England, down the east coast, and some snow showers through the Great Lakes with some very chilly air beginning to move in. Daytime highs in the 60s across the Midwest. Will be in the 70s in the southeast with sunshine.